everyone for joining. Thank you everyone who sent. I lost my audio.
We hear you.
No.
You cut out briefly.
Picture.
Those pods. Just
Yeah. They don't want to cooperate with me, so it's fine. It's fine. Sorry about that. So thank you for submitting your videos. I know that for some of you, maybe many of you, this was out of your comfort zone, and it was hard. It was a hard exercise. However, I hope that it was valuable and that it will continue to be valuable. So thank you for putting yourselves out there and doing this with us. So what we're going to do today is we have the videos that have been submitted, and what I thought would be good would be to share my screen, share the video so we can all watch them together. And then myself, Marga's going to join us a little bit late, but myself, Kim and Lou can provide you feedback so that you can, iterate on this video and then improve for the second and hopefully final draft of it, or maybe the final draft of it. We've taken some notes. I don't believe you've gotten those notes yet, but we can send them to you later so that you have them. And so, yeah, we'll just discuss, kind of our notes and some observations to help you improve the videos that you sent us so that you can record another version and send it to us in 2 days. Is that the 18th, right?
So the detail is that, yeah, so Julian's hand is already up. As we talked before, not everyone can be selected for the COP. So there will be a few videos that will be selected to have a quick turnaround and re-recorded for final versions for the Conference of Parties. But aside from that, this is about you guys, and everyone will have until the end of the 25th, I believe. So a whole other week and a weekend to work on your revised versions after this feedback.
Thank you.
And I will emphasize that this is a golden opportunity. I know you are putting yourselves out there. You recorded a video that is terrifying for a lot of you. You shared it with others, also terrifying. And now we're going to watch it all together and provide feedback. So we are on the terrifying bus together. But again, this is my ringtone.
I feel like there's an opportunity to have like a background and all of us being like, in a picture of that. Anyway, carry on.
But this is a safe space, everyone, and it's a small group, and you don't usually have an opportunity to have an expert, amazing communication person like Monica here to give you individual feedback. So I'm really proud of everyone for coming today and putting themselves out there. Oh my God, my delivery is here, obviously. So I will hand it back over to Monica, but I just wanted to say you guys are all very brave.
Thank you, Kim.
Answered your question, Julian.
Yeah, partially. So just to reconfirm, that's the 25th or in 2 days?
So there are some people who are going to be selected, and those people are going to have to turn around the video Hola Marcela, in 2 days. So we'll let you know. We'll let those people whose videos we select, we'll let them know, and they'll have to send us a new video in 2 days. For the rest of you,
will you let them know today? Or considering it's 2 days away? Yeah, okay.
Yes. And then the rest of you are, you'll have a little bit more time to submit the video. But as Kim said, even if your video is not selected for this video, this is a really valuable opportunity to share, to have a product where you can showcase what you've been doing and the skills that you've been learning. So we highly encourage you to do that.
Sure. And sorry, just because I have a meeting in a little, so I won't be able to stay the entire office hour, but those written notes, regardless, they will go to everyone also later today, or?
Yes, we will
Absolutely.
share. Yeah, so when do you have to go?
Sorry?
When do you have to go? When do you have to leave?
In about a half hour.
Okay, so we'll start with you. So I'm gonna share my screen. Share sound, and then, okay. Here we go.
FYI, I didn't dress up because I knew it was just a practice run.
Yeah,
We know. That's for sure.
we were aware that might have been the strategy for a lot of you.
Why is this? Okay, here we go. All right. Okay. All right. So we're gonna watch each of the videos, and then we'll go through some of our feedback to, kind of general notes on anything from like framing and lighting. And I know that some of you didn't pay as much attention for this as what you said, Julian, like this is a draft, and that's fine, but we'll still give you those notes so that you're mindful for those. And then we'll do that for each of the videos. All right, let me know if you can't hear it.
Dear Member State representatives and IAI officials, my name is Julian, and I am a current IAI STEP Fellow in Science Diplomacy from Canada, and today I would like to suggest that IAI member states can both benefit from and contribute to key discussions on the importance of polar regions and climate change. Currently, there is a renewed focus on global environmental change research that exceeds the boundaries of nation states and requires regional cooperation on the shared problems that climate change brings, with a direct impact on the Inter-Americas region, such as the economic and demographic effects from melting ice and sea level rise on the coastal communities and islands across the Americas, the development and contestation of new shipping lanes and trade corridors through sea passage, the changing nature of ecotourism and the need for environmentally conscious citizens and tourism, and of course, continued environmental degradation like drought, floods, famine, etc. as the earth warms. Accordingly, I'd like to propose that the IAI research agenda incorporate the issue of polar regions into future research on climate change and its effects on the Americas. Thank you.
All right, claps all around for being the first brave voluntold person to share. All right, so let me find my notes. Can't find my notes. So Julian, will I find my notes? How did it feel to do this? How was it?
Normal, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
I mean, just recording. I've been doing recorded lectures for my students at the U of T for obviously a year now, so you kind of get used to it.
Okay, awesome. Well, so in terms of, notes for you, I really liked how you provided like concrete examples of, the transnational impacts of climate change. You had a variety of them, which I think really illustrates the breadth of the impact. I think for timing reasons, you only have a minute. I would probably suggest that for the next version, you pick maybe a couple that are more relevant to the audience that you're going to be addressing. This next note is kind of a general note for all of you. I know that you were probably thinking about, I'm going to do a pitch, like an elevator pitch, as if I was talking to someone, but this is going to be a video. It's going to be, it's short, it's going to be edited. And so you don't need to say, my name is so-and-so, and I represent X and Y, and I'm a fellow of this. First, because that takes, anywhere between like 10 to 20 seconds, and you only have a minute, so that's precious time. And second, that in a video, that can be added. So that can be added to what's called a lower third, where like you see here in Zoom, you see the name at the bottom, like that can be edited into the video. And so don't worry about doing that. You can go straight into the issue. Something else that I would suggest, Julian, is, if you can be more specific, you talk about nations, like they can incorporate the issue of polar regions into their research. You could give a concrete examples of like, how would that look? That, I think that would make it more tangible for people who are watching or listening. And then, for the next version, try to use your phone and then improve framing. Like we were kind of looking at like way a lot above your head and it's kind of dark. And then try not to read if possible. If you want to have notes and like bullet points to refer to, but try to avoid just reading a script. But other than that, Kim or Lua or Marcela, I don't know if you have any other notes for Julian.
Yeah, I can include a quick comment. In general, you can tell you're really confident, Julian, and that comes through. It's really positive. I agree with Monica that your examples are great. And then relating to your examples to actual countries that might be part of those examples might also help grab attention, right? Like sea level rises would affect Caribbean nations like Panama, where entire, or island nations. And then the other thing was that, and this is a general comment I think that applies to a lot of you, that the video is addressed to the government officials in general that will be present at the IAI COP, not the IAI, right? Like the IAI is on your side. We're already doing the science. We're already advocating for these issues. Who you are trying to convince are the government officials that are going to be at the COP, or government officials in general that are members of this inter-American region that are affected by this problem. And then again, I would say another general comment that I might repeat with a bunch of you is that it was kind of lost the role of science diplomacy, right? Like science diplomacy isn't mentioned, I think, in anyone's video, strangely enough. And that was one of the questions we asked you. What is the role of science diplomacy in providing the solution to this problem that you are taking a lot of time and outlining in your video? So those are my comments.
Thank you,
Yeah,
both. Very helpful. Oh, hey.
I completely agree with Monica and Kim. I think you're very confident, Julian, and that you can tell that. And what I would say is, like, remember about lighting and your gestures, try not to be so rigid, maybe, because, it can be really, really great, the video. And yeah, try to remember what Kim just said. Remember to make a reference to the Science Diplomacy Project. That's what we want to convey, actually. Besides being a part of COP, this video will be yours and ours to disseminate afterwards. So just try to make it a little bit more general, but you're doing great for the first time.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I was trying to hold back on the gestures, but
I mean, if you're
Okay.
not a person who makes a lot of gestures, that's fine. But if you're a person who like I like to speak with my hands, so having the framing where, like, I'm gonna lower my camera a little bit, where you can see my elbows. It's not just like T-Rex, floating hands, and it's not just like a floating head. That's great, because if it might feel exaggerated for you because you're sitting alone in a room, but for the audience is going to be engaging, because it's going to simulate as close as possible the experience of actually speaking with someone. So imagine that you're actually speaking with these people, like you're giving an address, right? And so it's fine to use, if you feel comfortable,
Yeah.
it's fine to use those gestures, and you don't want to move around a lot because you don't want to step out of the frame. But if you want to use your hands, that's fine. That's perfect.
Exactly.
Marcela, you wanted to add something?
Yes, thanks. Good job, Julian. I also liked your video very much. My comment, in addition to what Monica, Lucia, and Kim have already said, is I think the content of all the videos, not only you, but all the fellows, and in terms of why we're putting together this video is we would like to present to government officials, not only the IAI COP, but we'd like to use this video as an outreach material to other governments. As you know, we've been negotiating with other governments from Latin America and Caribbean to implement a program of science policy fellowships, similar to what AAAS has in the United States, to what MITEX has in Canada, and what we are trying to do. We've been fortunate enough to start the pilots in Argentina and in Mexico, but we would like to expand that to other countries. So the professional development training, science diplomacy, is what brings all the fellows together, right? Each of you is located in one country and you're following one of the programs. But what brings you all together in this training and common areas of interest is the science diplomacy training. And then what it would be nice to hear in your video is also, we came together as this group of fellows, we come from 4 countries, we bring different expertise. We have identified this topic of polar regions and climate change because, of its importance, and you do lay out some of the arguments that are very good. The thing is, what is your science diplomacy project addressing, and why is it important for other countries in the region? So I think that would be also nice because it has the science diplomacy there. It has the work of the team, the work of the fellows, the countries that you bring to work together in this task. So that's what I would recommend to be also addressed in the video. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcela. And I would say, in thinking about how to incorporate science diplomacy, because this video is going to reach multiple audience or potentially reach multiple audiences, I would recommend that you don't say my science diplomacy project is about X, Y, and Z, but instead tell us about the problem. Like for Julian's, the impact of climate change extends beyond the polar regions, like the melting of polar ice. It's not only affecting polar countries, but it's affecting countries in the Caribbean, like island nations, and then provide an example of what those impacts are. And then say, because this is a transnational issue, science diplomacy provides solutions because X, Y, and Z. So think about it as, problem solution, not necessarily as talking about your project and adding that this is a project that you're doing as part of a STEP fellowship. But try to think about it as like you're telling a story, right? Like you're telling the story of why the melting of polar ice, it concerns everyone, and why science diplomacy is a solution for this issue, or whatever. I'm just using that example, like whatever your problem is, why science diplomacy is a solution to the issue. All right, let's see. Anna, is Anna here? I can't see everyone. So. And I see you now, Anna. You're like, no, not me.
Oh
right,
boy.
All right.
My name is Anna Watson, and I'm a STEP fellow focused on environmental governance. Our team project in science diplomacy addresses the key role of the polar areas for the Americas in the context of global change. Interconnected economy, security, and cultural effects in these landscapes will impact the whole region and transform geopolitical relations. The consequences of this issue expands beyond boundaries, including coastal populations in the Caribbean, and they might even jeopardize international industries and countries' development strategies. Science diplomacy approach will improve predictability, achieve a transdisciplinary understanding of the risk and emerging opportunities, as well as secure the inclusion of cultural diversity and vulnerable populations. Moreover, it will foster current national research efforts and investments by articulating science with effective decision-making.
Go, Anna. That wasn't bad at all. I don't know. I mean, I know why you're like, not me, but that was very good. That was very good, Anna.
Monica,
I feel
sorry.
like
Can we stop sharing screen while we provide our
Yes.
feedback? Thank
Sure.
you.
Yeah.
Good. That makes me feel better.
Yes, absolutely. All right. You did a really great job, Anna. I think you were the only one or one of the few people who explicitly mentioned science diplomacy. And I really appreciated that you mentioned science diplomacy. I really appreciated that you presented science diplomacy and as a solution. And so one of the things that I want to know is how, like, I want to know more about how science diplomacy is a solution. Like, can you suggest a specific action that, countries can take or that people can take to address this solution, to engage in science diplomacy as a solution to your problem? So in the other thing I would suggest is, instead of, you said like our project addresses, what I just mentioned, to kind of talk about the problem more generally. Can you tell me about why the Latin American and the Caribbean region, for example, should care about polar regions? What's at stake? I think you already mentioned some of these things. Like, I really appreciated that you talked about inclusion and cultural diversity and like how science diplomacy brings those things to the table, because, I think, at least at first glance, they're not obviously about science. They are, because science is done by people and all these things matter. But I think when people think about science, the first thing that their mind goes to is not cultural diversity. So I really appreciated that you connected all those different dimensions to it. And so what I suggest is, again, what I said before, don't say your name, like, don't speak about like our project does or my project does, like, go straight into the issue. But I think you have a lot of really great things to work with here.
thanks. Thank you.
Yay. And I just quick comment there too. I think Anna did an awesome job. All of you did, really. But knowing Anna and knowing your background and your story and your area of expertise, I would also be curious to know how you could relate personally somehow to this content. I think Julianne was the only one who actually did this in all the videos by just simply saying, in my home country of Canada. And that to me made me sit up and say, oh, wow, she really cares about this. And that's one of the points that Monica included in the training, how to humanize your message. So storytelling is one way, but also personally connecting to the content. And just as it can be a small comment. So I would encourage you to find a way to do that too.
Anna, I loved it. And this may be a small detail. I think nobody said it yet, but the glasses, we have like a whole reflection. And I think it will be better. Maybe you feel more comfortable but because you were reading or something, but we can see the whole reflection of the screen. So maybe it will be better if you can take it off or find another, like, you got what I mean.
Yeah.
Angle.
Thank you.
That was the word, angle.
Yeah. I mean, and generally, if you can, when you're recording, if you can take your glasses off. I mean, if you're recording with a phone, this is less of an issue because the screen is smaller. But if it's possible to remove your glasses, that helps with reflection. If it's not, then I would suggest like playing with the angle a little bit, so that you don't see the reflection. And as I said, like, if you can avoid reading for your next version, that'd be great. Marcela.
Yeah, along the same comments, and actually what Monica just said, I think it's very important. Somehow it gives the impression that you are reading. So maybe what you have to do is following some of Monica's advice and Practice some in a way that you can make breaks between one statement and the other. I think there's some of the guidelines mentioned that, make a statement, hold it for a few seconds, and then come with some other arguments. I think that would call the attention of the audience a little more. Another thing that I would recommend to all the fellows is that the first statement, whatever you say first, really strikes the audience, and it makes the audience more curious to, wait what you're going to say next, or it drives them away. So I think whatever you say first, the first 5 seconds, 10 seconds, you would really be appealing to the audience. So what is your statement? What you're gonna mention, in the 1 minute that you have your pitch? What is it striking that would get the audience to listen to whatever you're going to say for the whole minute? So I would invite everybody to think, what is the first thing that I'm going to say to open my video? So that's what I would recommend to everybody.
Yes, I agree with Marcela. Think about what's your hook, and it could be something that is surprising. Like for those of you, for those of you who are, for example, working on polar issues, I think that's something that is easily surprising, that, countries like, where I'm from, like Puerto Rico, need to be worried about this and need to be taking action and pushing for action about this. Like, this is not something, in Puerto Rico, they're not thinking about climate change very much, sadly, but, like use that, like you can use things like that to grab your audience. You can start with a question, and we're going to see, we're going to see some examples. Hola, Marga.
Hola, sorry for being late.
It's okay. So, try to use that. Don't be afraid to make a surprising statement or question at the beginning. Because, if that's going to make people be like, what? They're going to sit up and be like, oh, I never thought about that. That's an invitation for a continued conversation. So yeah, that is something else to consider.
That is, I completely agree with Monica. The first and seconds and Marce are like super paramount importance. You can say a statement, a question, something that a hook, un gancho, like makes people want to continue watching the video. So the first and seconds are crucial.
Awesome. Thank you, Lou. Thank you, everyone. All right. Let me find the next pitch. So I'm going to go with Julianne next, because Kim already mentioned something about her video, and I want to highlight that example. So we're going to go with you next.
The polar regions are amongst the most rapidly changing environments on the planet, and those changes are not restricted to the poles. Melting sea ice has the potential to recontour not just coastlines and weather patterns, but global trade routes. The suggestion of a polar Silk Road that would connect East Asia to Western Europe via the Arctic Ocean has not only economic, environmental, and social implications for Arctic nations like Canada, my home country, but for Latin American countries like Panama, Mexico, Venezuela, and Colombia. Member nations of the Inter-American Institute are well positioned to adapt to these changes. Through research programming that looks at global change through the lens of polar tropical connections, member states can learn from each other, strengthen partnerships, advance national and international interests on global change environmental issues like sea level rise and ocean plastics pollution. Thank you.
All right. This is a great example of how you can bring yourself into a story, into your pitch, into whatever you're talking about. I really liked, Julianne, how you reference where you're from, and you use that well in several ways. You use that well to kind of bring yourself into the story and create that human connection. But you also use that well because Canada is one of those countries that we're like, duh, it's like, it's cold in Canada. Of course they care about polar ice. But then you make the connections that it's not just countries like mine, like everybody should be concerned, and you go into specific examples of how Latin American, Caribbean countries should be concerned about the issue. I also really liked how you used the polar Silk Roads, as an analogy that people, it's an example of diplomacy, of transnational collaboration in another issue. Really, really liked how you brought that in to kind of give people a reference of, what this type of collaboration might look like. I also appreciated that you offered a glimpse of, what member states can do. I like to know more, like concretely, what's the next step that you would suggest? Pacing was great. The framing was great. The audio, it was a little low. So if there's a way to, I don't know if you recorded this with your phone or your computer, but like try to get a little closer. I mean, I know that then that you sacrifice the framing, or you can speak a little louder. That'd be great. Other comments. Oh, and the last thing I'll say is, you didn't mention science diplomacy explicitly, but I think through the example there, it would be very, very easy for you to insert that there, because the examples that you're offering are clearly science diplomacy. Just need to say the word.
I might disagree on that. If that's, sorry, I'm late and I'm like, ooh, coming in. But actually, if everybody says the word science diplomacy, it will become repetitive. I'm just thinking on the kind of the audience listening. And sometimes when you use the word to define the word, it's kind of counterproductive. Okay. Because science diplomacy is important because science. So if that's, Juliana, you were great and it's very, very clear. So I think in that case, it's not necessary, especially because probably the person before you or after you will also say the word. So I would say that's not compulsory. If you were like standing alone and you alone were doing something on science diplomacy, speaking on science diplomacy and nobody else, but because you're going to have like 20 other people, maybe that will become redundant. So I think in your case is like super clear. And I would say maybe just one detail, use a stat, like, sea level rise is still very abstract. Like, what does it mean? Can you find like, what's the economic damage on the tourism or impact on tourism for the Caribbean projected in the year 2080 or something? And just to bring that home, like, is there any specific stat that you can say so that the diplomats in the Caribbean nations will be like, oh, wow, this is happening to us. And the last thing, maybe Monica, you can comment on the framing. Was the camera a bit too low for Julianne or not? I got the sense that it was a bit too low and you were kind of from the, like this, no?
I would have to look at it again.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have to, it wasn't something that, it wasn't a flag for me.
Okay.
Question, is someone from the IAI doing like an intro clip before putting all these videos together when you put it all to say like science diplomacy? Okay.
Plenty of times.
Yes, we will.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? And we want to try to get through as many of these as possible. So we're trying to keep our comments brief, but if any of you fellows have comments or suggestions, please feel free to chime in. It doesn't have to be just the staff or facilitators.
Yes, I will like to say one thing about it.
Go ahead.
We were talking each other in our group about how we were going to make our video, because we were thinking that maybe say 4 videos of nearly the same theme are going to be tiresome. So we thought about how about making one video per team where all of us can sum your observations and so on, to take the best out of each video so that we all together can work on only one video per team. We were thinking about that. That would be better instead of looking at 4, 3, whatever number of videos of the same thing. And that would shorten our presentation for each team. And that's it.
So you mean like, so, you know, for example, everybody who's working on like vector-borne diseases, like all of you come together, pick a spokesperson, and then come up, like incorporate all of the input for all of the videos, and then work. I think that'd be fine, yeah. I mean, I think the plan is to select a video that represents each project, right? Kim, Lou?
Yes.
And so I think that would be, yeah, I think that'd be fine.
The challenge though is the editing. So I don't know what the editing capabilities are.
No, so they're going to choose a spokesperson. So it's going to be one person, but everybody in the team is going to provide input for that person who's going to record the video. So they're going to come up with a common pitch, and then the person who's selected from each team, that's going to be the person who records. It's not going to be like 4 people.
I saw Lou panicking already with the editors. No, but it's important that the exercise is done individually.
Yes.
If you want to do that at the end, that's fine, but that doesn't, that doesn't release you from doing the individual exercise, because everybody needs to go through the exercise. That's how you get better at it, right?
Yes, that was exactly what I was going to say, Marga. Thank you.
So I'm gonna go to the next video.
Monica, just real quick, just wanted to very brief comments to Julian. It was really nice. I really liked your video. I think you have all the elements there in the pitch. You talk about the science diplomacy. You talk about, the importance. I really like your first statement. It caught my attention to want to listen more what was coming next. So it was really nice. The only comment, it was also about the framing. I think one thing that might be important is that this is a professional video, so we would recommend that you dress up professionally, and that whoever is your audience, those are government officials, so dress up. The upper body, so it's not only the face, which in your case, it's not only the face, the background. So I think those things also to take into account. Sometimes the voice tone, so it's not the same throughout the whole entire 1 minute. So you can emphasize a few things that you want. If you want to say, my home country, Canada, if you want to emphasize that. So just that you change a little bit the voice tone, I think that would call for whatever statement that you want to emphasize as one feature in the video. But that will be my only comment. Well done.
Thank you, Marcela. All right.
Thank you, Elle, for the comments.
Hi, my name is Shweta Pati. I'm a Canadian Science Policy Fellow, and I'd like to make a pitch for countries in the North and South Americas to work together to tackle the issue of vector-borne diseases exacerbated by climate change. Vector-borne diseases like Zika, dengue, malaria, chikungunya, and others cause chronic infections and kill more than 700,000 people around the world annually. These diseases are prevalent across the Americas, and climate change is causing their spread and behaviors to change in ways that increase the risks across North and South America, and especially rendering North America much more vulnerable than before. We need to learn from the lessons of the COVID-19 pandemic and act proactively to tackle this problem of vector-borne diseases. We need to work together to develop cross-disciplinary research networks, climate and health data sharing infrastructure, and most of all, international cooperation to tackle this problem.
Awesome. Where are you, Shweta? Okay, here we go. This is great. This is another great example of like you're using data, like you're providing concrete numbers of how many people are affected by vector-borne diseases. And the more concrete and human you can make an issue, the better. In any time that you're using numbers, beyond providing the data, I would suggest, like, can you connect that to things that people will know even more? Like, for example, if you send like 700,000 people are affected by dengue a year, then, and that's the equivalent of the population of this city. So, you know, if you're imagining how many people and you think to a city that you've been to that city, you're like, oh my God, that's a lot of people, because it makes it more human. So just generally, there's several of you who, you know, in your pitches, you mention numbers, you use numbers. And so think about how do you connect that, you know, yes, adding an analogy or, you know, adding in a concrete example of what does that number mean, so that people understand the impact. I really liked how you, you know, you connected it to, like, somewhat surprising, like, you know, these vector-borne diseases we associate with the tropics, but you talked about how because of climate change, like these diseases are, you know, they're creeping up in North America. You know, they're becoming common in places where they didn't used to be, and that's a big issue. So really great job with that. I'd suggest, you know, jumping right into the issue, you know, as I've mentioned before, no need to say your name, no need to say like my project this or that. And if you could think about how to be more concrete about the solutions, like what does that collaboration look like? I want to know more about like what are the next steps. But really great job.
Thanks, Monica, for that feedback.
Other comments?
I had a comment, and again, we'll be sharing all of these after the office hours in writing, but I appreciated, Shweta, that you listed out vector-borne diseases, because I think we often forget that that's a technical term, and that not everybody knows what they are. So I really appreciated that you took the time to do that. And then I think at the end, as Monica was saying, there's a perfect opportunity, especially as you're relating to draw out that example and that solution, maybe as it relates to data sharing. And since you allude to COVID-19, I think it's a great segue to do that there at the end, and would give that concrete solution that Monica was suggesting. Those are my only comments. It was awesome.
Awesome. Right. Let's go to the next. Oh, where did it go? There you go. Escape. And if you want to use the chat too to provide feedback, feel free to do so. I know Marga's doing that as well. So, all right, I'm going to go with you next, Vicente.
Hydrogen is a growing alternative source of energy that can drive Mexico's sustainable economic development. How, you may ask? To achieve energy security, Mexico needs to diversify the type of technologies put in place to obtain and store renewable energy. Hydrogen is a clean fuel that produces only energy and water, and can be used to store, transport, and produce on-site clean energy. For example, Mexico can take advantage of its great solar potential to produce hydrogen that can be safely stored and efficiently converted back into energy where and when needed. Mexico's representatives can help the country become a hub for future global hydrogen economy and establish this technology as a driver for national growth.
Thank you, Vicente. That was great. There's so many things I like here. I love how you jump right into the issue. You're like, I'm gonna talk to you about hydrogen. I'm not gonna be like, you know, flowers and things. I'm like, hydrogen, this, that, and the other thing. I love how you started with a statement about like the potential of hydrogen, and then you follow that up with a question, because, you know, hydrogen it's not an energy source that a lot of people know about or that we talk a lot about. So you start with like, here's the potential, how, you may ask. I really loved how you use the question there to invite your audience and be like, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, Maria, I think I agree with you. There's a little bit of jargon still for people, especially people who are not in energy and who, you know, may be aware of, you know, traditionally alternative energy sources like wind and solar, but hydrogen is not on their radar. So I would think about how do you connect that to the things that they know, to the types of energy sources that they're familiar with, be it fossil fuels, like why is hydrogen an alternative to fossil fuels, but why is hydrogen an alternative to maybe other alternative sources that people are more familiar with, like solar or wind. So try to connect it to what people know, because I feel like you still, with this topic, you still need to bring people in to make them aware of, like, first, like hydrogen is an energy source. Like there's maybe there are people who have no idea of this. Something else that I really liked is how you're like you're speaking directly to Mexican officials, and you're like, this is an opportunity for Mexico, like economic development. It's also an opportunity for leadership. And I really, really like how you use that. You're appealing to, like, we have an opportunity to be leaders here. Don't you want the glory of this? Which, all politicians and, people like that. So I really like that. Slow down a little bit. You have, your pitch was 45 seconds. So you have a little bit of time to address some of the, the points that we've made in terms of like jargon and contextualizing hydrogen a little bit more, but you also have time to breathe. Sometimes you feel like you might feel like you're speaking slowly, but for your audience, it's perfect because you're providing them with information that they've never heard before. And so they need time to process that information. So remember to breathe, slow down, and give people time to kind of process and take in what you're saying. And then in terms of the framing, if you can widen the frame so that we can see more of your arms and if we can see your elbows, that's great. And then have a little bit more light in front of you, because the frame is a little dark and you're also kind of like looking a little bit down. So be mindful of your setup, but yeah, great job.
I would like to add, Vicente, because I know your group is on the circular economy, which is a buzzword for us, and I think with government officials too. So I think if you can just throw that term in there, that this hydrogen energy, alternative energy hub in Mexico would be a circular economy hub, and science diplomacy would be important in, just maybe working in those two buzzwords or terms would be excellent to add to your video.
And Vicente, I thought it was a great idea what you sent me on the email, that you and your other fellows from the group did a whole video for the group. I think it was great. I'm sorry that I couldn't reply, but it was a good idea to execute it that way. But remember that it would be great to have the video from all of you to practice.
Yeah. Regarding our group, do you remember it's a little bit big, so we divided into two subgroups, and we
You're
are
right.
30, so I don't know, like,
You're right. No, you're right.
Hydrogen only and
Clean energy then.
Clean
Yes.
energy. Yes, with Asif and Kia. Yeah.
My apologies. Yes.
Maria's background are changing.
And regarding there's something that I wrote to Lucia, but I haven't, I don't know if you know, but from the feedback given by my teammates, so I am not going to address Mexico only. I'm going to change wherever it says Mexico, I'm going to change it for an IAI member states equivalent. I'm not going to be repetitive. I'm trying to. There's a draft for a new script that I share with Lucia. So yeah, that's also into consideration.
Great. Yeah, I would say, I think it's if you want to include more, broadly mention member states, that's great. I think if you still want to use an example or two, because I think that makes it more concrete, where you're like, member states can become a hub. And so it's like, so it's going to be like 20 countries that are going to become a hub for this. So, be mindful of that. And in terms of what Kim's comment made me think about, if there are certain buzzwords that you can use, think about how to leverage them. Like circular economy, I have no idea what that means. And so if I was sitting in the audience, I'd be like, I don't know, like clean energy is something that resonates with me. So, those both buzzwords can be a double-edged sword, because if there are people, not everybody in the audience is clued in. It's like any type of jargon. If people are not clued into what that means, they're like, they tune out. But with certain if like clean energy, I think is a good example of a buzzword that you can assume most people are going to know about it. There is momentum behind people or countries adopting this. So that's an example of something you can use well. But be mindful of buzzwords. They can be jargon, and they can be a double-edged sword. Nikia, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, Monica, I just wanted to say we wanted to make sure we created a balance, because as you said, there may be a certain part of the community not as familiar with hydrogen as they are with wind and solar. So if we want to make that connection, I think we have to walk a fine line between throwing in these buzzwords and then drawing them in and making them feel comfortable and part of the conversation. And then secondly, like Vicente said, and I remember Marga said this, I don't want to chop up Marga's words, but I think what we were trying to do, we each had our specific regions, Canada, US, and Mexico, that we're working on. But in terms of this, like Daniel's group, we wanted to make it more generally applied so that the COP attendees saw themselves in the message. So Vicente said when he resent the edited script where it was Mexico initially, we replaced it with our IAI region. So make it more broadly applicable. That was our idea behind that. But whichever the team thinks would be best, if our video is selected, that would be great. We didn't want to make the message to the exclusion of other regions who could see themselves in this particular initiative. That was our thought behind that.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And as you said, like with many of these things, you have to walk a fine line, right? Like you're trying to appeal to a broad audience that has many different backgrounds, many different interests. And so that's why using examples, like you can make the broad statement of member states and then have a couple of examples, maybe examples that are, that have a lot of influence in the region, or maybe examples that are representative of, is Mexico representative of like all of Latin America? It's not, but it's maybe representative of like North America or parts of Central America. So think about using those examples wisely so that you can connect with different common experiences, even though, if you're talking to someone from like Honduras and you say Mexico, they're going to be like, not me, because I'm not from Mexico. But if you mention something it's common to that kind of micro region, they're going to be like, oh, they're talking about Mexico, but that's also relevant for me. So think about those things as well.
Okay.
All right, let's go to the next person. Okay. Sophia, I'm going to go with you next because I know you have to leave soonish.
Thank you. There is increasing evidence and awareness of the regional impact of environmental change. As a fellow of the IAI Science Diplomacy Program, I would like to call for the attention of the IAI member countries' representatives about climate change in the polar regions and its socio-economical and environmental implications throughout the Americas. These changes and their impact exceed the boundaries of nation states, and they require transnational cooperation and transdisciplinary approaches. For example, as ice melts in the poles, sea level rises, and this affects coastal communities from distant sites such as the tropics, or the migration routes of emblematic animal species becomes affected. These important issues have not been addressed from a regional lens, leading to a window of opportunity for the IAI member countries to act upon, for example, through training and capacity building, international cooperation and outreach, and the integration of the local communities who are directly affected by these issues.
Great job, Sophia. Really liked how you provided concrete examples. You tied it to what's happening in the polar regions affects the tropics. One thing that I liked and that I think you could dig deeper into is that you talked about how this affects the migration patterns of birds. Like, it made me think of like what's an emblematic bird in Latin America. It made me think of the condor. So is there an example of, I don't know if climate change is affecting the condor particularly, or if it migrates. I don't know anything about birds, but like when I think of a bird that's emblematic of Latin America, I go to the condor. So can you connect it to something that's emblematic that a lot of countries, even if this bird or animal is not in their country, that they'd be like, oh yes, that I know that animal, that would be a shame. Let me go look at my notes to make sure that I'm hitting everything. Yeah, I appreciated how you contextualize that, this is a transnational issue, that it exceeds boundaries. It requires transdisciplinary collaborations. I really like your emphasis on collaboration. I know the last time we talked, Marga suggested that, you could connect some of the impacts that you mentioned to things more concrete, like, what I mentioned with the condor, but also like economic concerns, like, the economy has been deeply affected by COVID, and, this climate change could exacerbate this. So thinking about those things, and then in terms of framing, again, I want to see your elbows, I want to see more of your arms. If you feel comfortable being more expressive, I would invite you to do that. You need more, your face is kind of dark and you're kind of looking down on the device that you used. And then the audio was a little low and it was a little echoey. So if there's another room where you can record, you could do that.
Thanks, Monica. Great advice.
Sophie, just one thing. Be careful when you say you say science diplomacy fellowship or something like that. It's like, remember the science, technology, and policy fellowship. Science diplomacy is a pillar of the fellowship, just in case.
Yeah. So I like the idea of showing more of me, but the first times I recorded it, I moved so much my arms and like this, so I decided to cut myself because I made a lot of movements. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's fine. What you don't want to do is like kind of be dancing around in the frame, because that first, like, you could step off the frame and then that can be distracting, but you can absolutely use your hand. So one thing that I do, if I'm recording a video or if I'm giving a talk, like I have like a standing desk or, a table or a counter, like you can set up your phone there. And then what I actually do is I put something on the ground, like a cup, anything, some object that will remind me to stay there. Like when I work in a studio, we actually have like a little box with tape that we do. And so if it helps you to do that and you have tape at home and you want to tape a little box for you to step in, that's fine. Whatever helps you. But sometimes I just put an object that is going to remind me, like, don't move. It's fine to move your hands. Like, think about when you're watching people speak, especially if it's natural for you as a speaker to use your hands. It's important that you feel comfortable because, for most of us, speaking in front of a camera is not comfortable, is not natural. And so whatever you can do to feel more comfortable, from what you're wearing to how you're moving, how you're using your hands, don't be afraid to do that. You know, of course, you don't want to be like speaking and being like this, because this is distracting. But if you're talking and you're making a point and you want to like say like the bird or whatever, the whales, you know, that's fine, because it helps the audience, it helps the viewers connect with you as a speaker. So don't have this idea that you have to be like a news anchor where they're like sitting on their desk with their hands like this and they're like, I'm going to be reading from a prompter and I'm going to be barely moving my eyes because this is what I'm supposed to look like. You don't need to look like that.
But maybe try to sit, if you sit down like Monica is now, a little bit away from the camera so the arms are visible. Maybe that stops you from, if you're standing, it's more likely that you're going to dance, and I do that. If I stand, I move more than if I sit.
Yeah.
So the way Monica
That's a good tip.
sitting, but not sitting like me, like I'm a head, but sitting way back, so then all your arms are visible.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're gonna sit down, and you can use a chair that it doesn't have, like right now I'm on carpet, and so it's hard for me to move my chair, but my chair swivels. So if you're the kind of speaker you're talking and you tend to do this, then you want to use a chair that you can't do this, because you won't notice it, but you'll start dancing around on your chair. So those are
That's exactly what happened to me.
I think I included most of these things on my presentation. One thing that I didn't, and that is, it is really important as you record your next version is, and this goes for everyone, when you start recording, you can press record, sit back or stand back, look at the camera for a few seconds smiling, and then you can count to 5 in your head and then start recording. Many of you did this. You press record and then you started speaking and then you were like, I'm done, boop, and recording. And for the editing, that's very challenging because you're not giving the editor enough time to like phase you out or to cut your frame and add another person. So again, press record and count in your head, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. In your head, don't do it verbally. And then start speaking. And then once you're done and you say, thank you, smile, and then do that same count in your head, just so that you're giving time for an editor to work with your video.
And just one other thing for everybody, not just for you, Sophie, it's really important to stress words, like not to have like a plain speech. For example, science diplomacy is really important for us. Like try to make the speech, the pitch dynamic, not just like too plain for everybody.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and this, for some people, this feels more natural than others. So I would say, be strategic with what are the words, the enunciations that you want to vary, right? Like if there's a word, if there are pauses, like you can use pauses to add drama, to let people like be like, think about that for a second. So you can do that. However, if it doesn't feel natural to you, don't force it. I've seen people try to be speakers that they're not. So don't try to not be yourself as much as you can. What we're giving you are strategies that you can use to kind of pack more punch, to have what you're saying pack more punch. But take those with a grain of salt, because if it's something that just doesn't come natural to you, it's going to be harder. It's going to be more stressful for you to record the pitch doing that thing that's not natural to you. And then, finally, I think in these diplomacy or like political policy settings, it is, you're used to seeing that charismatic speaker that everybody's like, oh my God, I could hear them speak for hours. And of course, that's an asset for those people, but that's not the only way to be a good speaker. So don't feel forced to, like, if if you're not, you shouldn't feel the need to be like a stand-up comedian if you're not. If you're funny, absolutely, use that. Or if it's easy for you to like pause and add drama, absolutely do that. But don't force yourself into something that you're not comfortable with, if that makes sense. All right, I'm gonna go to you next, Sebastian.
Latin America produces beyond 1 billion cubic meters of wastewater every day. And our assessment indicates this technology is close to be obsolete. It's energy intensive and it's quite expensive to operate and to maintain. Overall, we're proposing a business model that takes into account water, energy, and biosolids by ensuring, first of all, narrowing the gap between energy and science, bringing science to territorial development, and ensuring proper development of business models, while at the same time cutting by half the CO2 emissions that are currently on 140,000 tons per year, creating green energy jobs and ensuring clean energy transitions for proper livelihood in Latin America.
Hi, Sebastian. I really like how you use numbers. You use numbers really, really well. Like it feels like you scaffold like what you're saying around numbers. So I really like that. I think numbers are a really effective way to convey impact and importance. As I think I've said this before, think about ways to make those numbers come alive. Like, you mentioned a couple of like big numbers, like, and that's the equivalent to, like the surface area of this place, or, like make those numbers, because for somebody who doesn't know about CO2 or who doesn't know about, I can't remember what the word is that you like, this, the number you used at the beginning, what it was for, but it was like cubic meters or like some cubic measure. Yeah,
1 billion cubic meters.
Right, so that's a big number, but like it's harder for a lot of people to think about like, what does cubic meters mean? Like, what does that look like? And so if you can make that come alive by using an analogy or an example of what that would be, I think that would be really, really helpful for your audience. You talked about clean energy, and that's one example about that buzzword that I think you could use to your advantage. There was a little bit too much jargon for me. Like you talked about biosolids and energy, and I have no idea how those are connected. I mean, I can make assumptions, but you don't want me making assumptions. So think about how you make that, the issue more accessible and more tangible. The other thing is, like you mentioned a couple of times, you mentioned a business model, like who's proposing this business model? Like what business model for what? It feels to me like that is key for what the message that you want to deliver, but we need to know what that business model is, who is proposing, who is it going to benefit for what you're talking about.
Great, thanks, Monica. That's very useful. And I mean, I think I talked to some of you about it. At the very end, I was not sure about to tape it or not. So finishing the tape, it was rewarding. But then looking at it after it was like, oh man.
It's hard. It's one of the hardest things you can do, like recording and then watching yourself. It can be painful. It just is. Like there's something about, I do tons of interviews and stuff, and I still don't like watching myself. So I think it's normal for us to be uncomfortable. It is really valuable to see where you can improve, where you're using muletillas. I don't know what the word in English is. You know, you're using the ums and the likes and whatever those words are called, where you are, the faces that you're making or tics that you have. It's very useful to see that, and then to be, not necessarily eliminate those things, but be more aware of you doing those things and how they may affect your delivery of your message. So I would say, you know, it's a great learning opportunity. And I'm really glad that it felt great to record it. Because for some people, it doesn't feel great to even record it. So yeah, I think you have a lot to work with. But my main comments would be, you know, make those numbers come alive and become tangible, and then be mindful of the jargon. And how do you explain those things so that people really grasp what you're talking about. Marcela.
Thank you.
Marcela, I can't hear you. I don't know if anybody else can hear her. No.
I couldn't either.
No. We can hear. No.
Yeah, it looks like we lost your audio.
No.
No.
Okay, well, Marcela figures out her audio. Any other thoughts or comments?
I will say I'm conflicted because I'm glad that Sebastian took it so seriously, but also I'm disappointed that he didn't show up dressed as Boris Johnson and made some sort of parody. That's my comment.
Boris Johnson. I know, I feel the same way, Marga. I think, you know, humor does have a mental reaction and causes people to remember what you say. If you can make people laugh, it's an effective tool for communication. So I think it fits well with you, Sebastian, if you can work in.
Make a joke.
Yeah. No, and that's why I say if you can build it in, I think looking for an equivalent for those numbers is the perfect opportunity to do that. And, you know, relating to something that's culturally relevant at the same time would be even better.
Yeah, I spent quite a bit of time trying to get those numbers. So estimating that based on current treatment plans and that information, I think that with a little bit of time, then I can sort of derive that into tangible and visual, or at least some object or sizable that is easy to connect with. That's clear. But as always, we had time, but at the very end, then you are running out of time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Marga mentioned on the chat Olympic pools. So if you can say like, that's the equivalent of, I don't know, 1 million Olympic pools, like that's like, whoa, that hits you, right? And so those analogies can be really great. Yeah, I would say if you can find ways to bring more of your personality, that would be fantastic. I mean, it's always better to see people for who they are and like see those connect, because again, it's about human connection. Fundamentally, it's about human connection. And the last thing I'll say is, you know, I know this was a draft, but for your video, don't use a virtual background. You know, what you have, like what you have now would be fine. You would have to adjust the height of your computer or your phone so that it's kind of eye level. But if you could move a little bit away from the window, I don't know which way it would be left and right, but if you can move a little bit away from the window so you don't have that backlighting, I think what you have now would be fine.
Yeah. And regarding I mean, it would be great to take this with more fun, and even thought about things about how to do it to, you know, at least create a different atmosphere with the people, the audience. But the problem is that we're talking to representatives, country representatives, and maybe some policymakers. So it's like, I even thought about adding emoticons of the poop and then the face and the people and things like that. You can't really do that, or can I?
No, probably not for this. However, one thing to think about in terms, you know, last time we talked about, or a couple of times ago, we talked about cultural relevance. And that is a place where cultural relevance comes in as well. Like culture, your culture played a role in shaping how you speak, how you move, the words that you use. And so that could be a point of connection where, you know, if you're in this big international meeting and you see someone, like if I'm in a meeting and I see someone who's like Puerto Rican, I'm like, yeah, like, you know, or who is, especially if you're, you know, in a place where maybe there's not a lot of Latinos or Latin American people, you know, there is that connection. So you can use that to your advantage.
Gracias. That's very helpful.
De nada. Yeah, I think we sometimes we feel pressure to like kind of tamp down who we are, like, you know, not fully show who we are at these like kind of more formal spaces. And I mean, again, I'm no science diplomat, and so what I'm saying might be wrong, but it is fine to show your personality. You know, there are appropriate things and not so appropriate things to do, but it's fine to showcase your personality.
Great. Did Marcela record her audio?
Oh yeah, Marcela, did you figure out your audio? Let's see. Can't see you. No, we still can't hear you. Did you try disconnecting your the headphones? Because that happened to me earlier where my headphones were being a pain and I lost my audio. I'm gonna show Monica, mi tocaya. I'm gonna show your video. And Marcela, hopefully you'll be able to come back at some point.
Hello, my name is Monica Jimenez, and it's a pleasure to be here. As you know, climate change has a direct relationship with health worldwide population, and its effects can increase the burden of diseases, especially those sensitive to climate change, like vector-borne diseases. We believe it is important to begin to have a dialogue between nations to talk about possible actions to mitigate its effects and be prepared to the future. This requires the collaboration of governments, scientists, and all stakeholders, and I want to invite you to participate in this dialogue and support actions related with global health and climate change. Thank you so much.
Let me look at my notes. Somebody else wants to start while I look for my notes. All right, I found them. Monica, I really like how you invite people to take action. You know, your pitch is really action oriented. And so are there ways you can be more concrete about what the action looks like? Is it a panel? Is it a meeting? Like, what are the goals of those actions you're suggesting? As we've mentioned before, you can jump right into the issue, you know, you can skip introducing yourself. And that should give you more time to provide more info on the so what of, you know, why should the audience be concerned about climate change, vector-borne diseases. And then the last thing I'll say is you talk about we, but who is we? You know, I think sometimes, especially when we're working in teams, and I think scientists in general, we're used to working in groups. And we're used to talking about our work in we and plural. But for some of these instances, first, you know, if the we is not clear, then the message can sometimes be lost because you're not really sure like who you're working with or who you be interacting with. And then it's fine to say, you know, I invite you or I did this. It's, yeah, I suggest that you think about that. But this is a great first draft. Other thoughts?
the, as you know.
Yeah.
That's it from me.
Yeah, be mindful of those, as you know, because not everybody might know. And I think I talked about this the last time. Like, I have a pet peeve of like when people are like, as we all know, and it's like, we don't all know. I don't know. So be careful with that. With the framing, if you can widen the frame, that's great. I like the background. It's plain, but it's bright. You might need a little bit more light. And then make sure that you're centered. You were slightly off centered where, it's for editing purposes, it might be hard to work with that. So make sure that you're centered. Yeah, it was, again, great first draft. Other comments or thoughts?
I don't have any additional comments. I think it was a great first draft, Monica, and I think just integrating these comments that Monica's shared will be an excellent second draft. And maybe this would be an opportunity to explicitly say science diplomacy at the end as well, and tie it into what is the role of science diplomacy. I know we're trying to keep that away from repetitive videos, but I think this would lend to referring to science diplomacy.
Okay, so we have 3 videos, I think, left. So I'm gonna go to, so we have Daniel, Cristina, and Alina, is that right? Those are the ones that are left? Okay, so I know that we're close to time, and so is there anybody from those people that are left that needs to go soon? Or can you stay a little bit so that we can provide you with our feedback?
I have to go at 1:30.
Okay. Who was, sorry, I can't see. Was that Nikia?
Yeah, this is Nikia.
Okay.
Yeah, Monica, sorry about that.
Okay. All right. But we don't have a video for you, right?
Yeah, I was just listening for Vicente's feedback.
Okay, that's fine. Is there somebody from your group who is one of those 3 people? Maybe we can go to that one first.
Yeah, it's Vicente. So it's Vicente, Asif, and I. Asif is not here. So I'm taking capturing the feedback for the group.
Okay.
Vicente's here, I think. So.
Okay. Yeah, and we've already watched this video. All right. So I'm gonna go with you first. Thank you, Nikia. I'm gonna go with you first, Daniel or Daniel. This code switching, it's a thing.
Hello, my name is Daniel. One of the most pressing issues right now is health, as we all know. There's also climate change. How climate change is going to affect our health, how our health, what we know about it, can be exchanged with some other people. We at the IAI believe that this is a very important issue that we would like to discuss about it. In order to achieve that, we have gathered a group of scientists, of experts, who are going to talk about it in a series of panels dealing with diseases, vector-borne diseases, climate change, and data sharing. We believe that this is a very important discussion and we would like you to join. So we will be very happy to see you there. Thank you.
All right. Where are you, Daniel? Okay. I really like that you connect climate change and health. And I feel like there's an opportunity there. I mean, I feel like there's more and more conversation about the connections between climate change and health. There's not enough. So I think there's an opportunity for you to leverage that connection. I want to hear sooner by Nikia. I want to hear sooner what the issue is. It was like in the last 10 or 15 seconds where you talked about what was the issue, what the invitation was. So think about moving that towards the beginning of the video. You know, I think you used a little bit too many fillers. Like sometimes, excuse me, we tend to say like, there's an issue and I'm going to tell you about the issue and then here's the issue. Just go straight to what the problem that you're addressing is. I was very, very interested in hearing more about the connection between climate change, vector-borne diseases, and data sharing. I think that's something that, you know, I think just because of my interest as a scientist, like data sharing seems like something that is kind of like out of the blue, like not something that's obvious for me to connect to these two issues. So I think there's an opportunity for you to kind of expand on that, like why data sharing, like why are you focusing on that? And then, you know, you talk about inviting people for panels, like, can you be more concrete? Like, what would this panels do? Like, what is the conversation gonna be about? And then finally, I loved the background. I love that it was different. You know, it was colorful, but it was neutral. It wasn't like super busy. I think like, to me, it says something about, you know, I can't pinpoint like where you are or where you're from the background, but it says something about where you are from, that it's colorful. There was it seemed like you might have been outside or in like in the courtyard. So there was a little bit of background noise. So maybe thinking about where, you know, when the background noise will be less. But I really like that choice of background, and the framing looks really good too. Other comments for Daniel or Daniel?
Let's see if you can hear me. Not sure if you can hear me now.
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. So I had to restart my computer. Yeah, I like the background. I think it's, you know, you can see the upper body. You make use of your hands when you speak, Daniel. So I think that is really good. And a common comment to you, Vicente, Sofia, and Sebastian. I mean, it's clear that you know your science, and it's clear that you have some strong arguments about the topic that you're addressing. But then the way that you deliver the message, it's, I think, referring to what Monica has always said. What is the, you know, the logic behind the storytelling? You know, who you want to convince? What are your arguments? What is the logic? I guess one trick, and Monica, you probably have mentioned that before, is like when you're not in front of a camera, but you're telling somebody, a friend, your grandmother, you know, what you're working on. Why is this topic so important? You know, how do you present the arguments? How do you develop this story to tell them, to convince what the problem is? What are the arguments? Why is this so important? What you're going to do about it? You know, what will be the ideal outcome? And also, what is your voice tone when it's not always the same, you know, when you say something that you're passionate about? Why is this so important? Why should people care about it? So you change your voice tone. It's not always the same for the entire 1 minute. If you want to emphasize something, and what is your first statement that, you know, should call everybody's attention, whether it is the problem or whether it is the solution that you're bringing up about something. So just, but there's no doubt, you know, the science. The issue is how do you deliver the message to an audience that is not necessarily composed of scientists. So I think that's the thing that you guys have to think about.
Gracias, Marcela. All right, if there are any other comments, you feel free while I go back to finding the remaining videos.
I'll make a quick comment, Monica, in general. For all of you who recorded in your second language, I applaud you, and for an extra level of bravery. And we do want to offer the option to record in your native language, Spanish, for the second version, if you so choose, if you feel more comfortable, because I think that will help potentially with a lot of these topics that we're hoping that you would practice. And for purposes of the COP, there will be translation. So don't worry about that. But I think it would be an opportunity to practice some of these skills and strengthen your pitch in your native language. So that's an option for those of you who wish to take it.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. Yeah, sometimes it's just easier to share ideas and feelings in your native language. It's also, I find it easier to do some of the things that Marcela has been stressing, like enunciation and emphasizing certain words. I do it differently in English and in Spanish. And so if you're gonna, I think there is value in doing these things in English, which is, often at these things a universal language. I think that's an important skill to develop. However, if you feel more comfortable, go for it. Do it in your native language.
Hello. Deforestation in the Brazilian Amazon has increased since 2018. Between August of 2019 and July of 2020, over 11,000 square kilometers of rainforest have been destroyed. This surge in deforestation results in increased greenhouse gas emissions, a loss of biodiversity, and negatively impacts the livelihoods of indigenous communities. Commercial agriculture is by far the largest driver of deforestation in the Brazilian Amazon. Because this is a complex issue, it requires a multifaceted approach that addresses the environmental, economic, and social impacts of deforestation. We therefore call on the international community's support in order to create and implement solutions to deforestation that are both environmentally sustainable and economically feasible. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, Cristina. Find my notes. I really liked how you use numbers to illustrate the impact. That 11,000 square kilometers of forest that are being lost. That's great. I also loved how you connected it to the cause. Like it's, agricultural activity and deforestation like that. That's really, really great because you're connecting, cause and effect. As I've mentioned with any numbers, if, what is that 11,000 square kilometers, like that's the equivalent of, how many football stadiums, how many, the size of a country, again, to make it more tangible. Your pacing was great. If you can speak a little bit louder or, get closer, I wouldn't say get closer to the microphone because the framing looked really good. But speak a little louder because the volume was a little low, or, if you can see if you can adjust the mic levels on your computer so that it's easier to hear you. And then the last thing is, if you can be more concrete about solutions, like how the international community can get to the end goal. Is it a panel? Is it a meeting? What type of collaborations? I was curious about those things watching the video, but really, really great job.
I will add, Cristina, that you can maybe be more specific about here in the science diplomacy aspect about the need for transnational governance in the Amazon countries. So maybe even mentioning the Amazon countries and how they are not working together, but they should in a way that's diplomatic and doesn't sound off with the IAI audience. But you have the opportunity to be more concrete because the Amazon is one ecosystem that is arbitrarily divided by imaginary lines that don't really respect that ecosystem, right? So transnational governance is the only solution. And maybe having that specific point would be powerful.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree with Monica. I really like your video, Cristina, and the framework was very good, as Monica said, and the lighting, the way your body and your face is showing, and the dress code, it's really good. So yeah, that part of the video, I really liked it. Really good.
Thank you so much for your feedback. I really struggled with how much detail to include. So hearing that more concrete solutions should be included is very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I think, there's little, it's like little tweaks that you'll have to make. I think you have a really fantastic start with this video. All right, last but not least, Aline, this, okay.
Water is precious. Every drop counts. Only in Latin America, 77 million people lack access to safe water. Wastewater treatment plants are an excellent choice to use and reuse water sustainably. However, their operation is hampered by the highly centralized technology and knowledge. That's why we're asking member states representatives to enhance the capacities of their cities, to develop their own technology solutions, and to enhance the knowledge of their people. This will allow them to have better, more efficient wastewater treatment plants, and to assure the supply of quality water for all their citizens. Thank you.
All right, what a great way to end. I mean, that was great. Really liked how you focused on impacting, like you started with the impact, you jumped right into the issue. You're using numbers, and I think, and this is a case where I think, again, if you can think about, 77 million people, like that's the population of, is it the population of the entire region? Is it like, that's a lot of people. So you could say like, that's the population of these countries, or like 17 countries together. Because I think, that the number in the way you're using it already packs a punch. And then if you make it more concrete and saying, I don't know, like it's the entire population of 12 countries in Latin America. If you imagine that many people not having access to water, it takes your breath away. So I really loved how you stated the problem clearly, how you focused on solutions, how you said like, these are the things you can do. I loved how you use your hands to be like 1, 2, 3 things. That's a great technique, and how you can use your hands, because it helps people follow along with you. Like first you do this, second you do this, third you do this. So I really appreciated the focus on solutions. The pacing was great. I don't really have major comments in terms of the content. The framing, the camera is a little bit too high above you. So if you can lower it, have it be at eye level. But we could see your arms, you use your gestures really well. So really, really great job.
Yeah, I also like Aline. Actually, you look like a politician speaking with your hands. You communicate very well. And I think to you and to Cristina, I really like your first statement, made me curious to listen to what was coming next in your video pitch. So I think it was nice, the arguments that you both used for the different topics that you're covering. So I think that was very interesting from a content point of view. I also like that you don't speak so fast, Aline and Cristina. You also, speak in a pace that it's easy to understand and to follow all your arguments. So I think that was nicely done.
Other thoughts?
As I mentioned in the chat, I really like the way you started the video, Aline, like with a hook. So maybe you try to emphasize it a little bit and it will be better. I loved it. Good job.
All right, well done, everyone. I think that was the last video we had. So again, thank you for staying. I know we're past our allotted time. Thank you so much for all of the hard work you did to create these. Again, I know that this is uncomfortable to do. It's challenging to deliver such a complex message in a minute, and you all did great. We hope that the feedback and the notes that we provided you will be helpful. We really look forward to seeing the next versions. We'll be in touch later today. Lou and Kim and Marcela, I'm gonna let you do the logistics, but we'll be in touch soon. We'll send you those written notes and we'll let you know who's selected and what the next steps are. But I really want to thank you all for all of the hard work. I know this is really hard, but it's just really fantastic to see you put the skills that you've been learning in practice, think deeply about how to engage your audiences with such important issues. And again, I really look forward to seeing the final versions and sharing them with the world.
Yes, thank you so much, everybody. I know it's really complicated and it's uncomfortable, but it's worth it completely. You'll make it.
Okay, we will be in touch today, everyone. We do have a tight timeline, and we again thank you for being on this ride with us, but I appreciate you being here today, and we'll follow up with an email today.
Any doubt?
Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Take care. Ciao.
Ciao.
Listo.